So here's a piece. This is our final Zohar for Yom Kippur. It has to deal with it deals with the concept of the SHIUR. First of all, it defines what a SHIUR is. I thought a SHIUR was a buck goat, a big, bold buck goat. But no, it's not. That's an A's. A SHIUR is a little billy goat, which is really what people in the Middle East eat. They prefer, if they could get a male goat, that's really what they want to eat. At any rate, it says like this. We'll come down here into the Matak Pedavash, try to pick out what he's talking. He says, what's the secret behind the carbon? That is, the carbon se'ir velo mila achra. There are certain times when the se'ir, which is a billy goat, and not another. Bahakriv se'ir l'chatos. We bring this se'ir for a sin offering. Im kol ha'olos, and all those that go, but b'kol modes ve'chamuadim, with all the rest of the karbanos, are those things that go up, and all the musafim and muadim. V'lo v'daber achra, but not another kind of animal, kogon par o kevis. Now, let me say this. For most Americans, where we think about meat in terms of the meat case, and we really are living in cities and so citified that we really don't realize that there is a nature in all of the animals. And so therefore, the agricultural society, which is the Jewish society, really were people shepherding and farming people. So really all the Torah is based on that. We could come to a time where we could understand the nature of animals again. And then these things will make a lot more sense. So over here, so a seer, what's the meaning of a seer? In the meat case, they all look the same. V'gam ba'amai seir b'rosh chodesh. So also that. So let's go on. V'hochon nami seir. So here also we have the concept of a male goat, billy goat. V'gam kambi yom kippurim. So we have the same thing. Why don't we? That's the one that gets the lot, he says, the lottery. Ella iteba begin to ihu sitra delay. Ella im tomer lefi shal seir hu hatzad shal sitra achra. That there's some relationship between the sitra achra, which is the power of the force of evil. For today the says lo chelik b'menu, and to give it a little piece from this. The man lo yiktarag al Yisrael ma'akrivim seir. So many places that's what they're saying. It says that because getting him tofel involved with the seir keeps him on this day of where the accusations could really pierce us. What's tomorrow actually in the year 5786. So he said Yeus Yafel v'nachal v'tamba v'fizev. According to that, my lo have a. So why not bring a buck goat, a male goat? Lama ein makrivim A's, shuhu gadol yoser, who is bigger. So we say like this. Mataratz elamida do itzrech eladavka seir shuhu katan sark lahakrif. You have to bring something small. Vihu ishtakachas l'marech the harshin. This is known by witches, wizards, people who practice witchcraft. V'hu hanimsach of anointed the balach shafim. The call of Adaihu Bama Delo is Chaver Benukva, because they always deal with a male animal that has never been with a female. Shakal Hamasech Bekishuv Ayida Eza Balchai Kagon Hatul. So, for example, a kitten, or tarnagol, or young chicken. Makpidim Shihi Akadin Shadol Nizka Kadaim. And the cave is to be small, still young, and something which is not ready for nekeva. I was just telling this little story about how my wife and I lived on a farm for a while, and we thought, hey, we're in Miami Beach, let's find a place that's a pet store, we'll buy some chicks. So we found the closest pet store. It turns out it was a store for Santeria, which is witchcraft. It was full of different kinds of wood. And in the back they had animals. And the animals, I guess, I don't really remember, but I thought they had goats back there, and they had different kinds of sheep, maybe not sheep, other things, chickens. Anyway, we got some chicks, but that was a weird experience. Tamshim rak b'seir. So everything that the witches use, they preferred animal is a billy goat. So because a goat, a buck goat, has lived with a woman, with a female aspect. He's always already been with a female. So therefore the other side doesn't really want it that much. Also, if you're ever around these animals, they smell really bad. They'll begin the ihu malka. So since he says this idea, so since the sitra achra is like a king, Yehavin le begin yikara delay. So we give him according to his honor. And what do we give him? A virgin animal. But for whatever reason, he hasn't answered why it has to be a male. So he says, Shahasamach mem hu melech, because it's a king. V'chein nosin laman kavodo, according to his honor, or his glory. Seir shalodis chaver adayim b'nekeva, a seir, a little buck goat, little billy goat. That is, that he never lived with the female, and as a result of that, he's still, all the koach and the energies within him are still intact. They're pure. And this is known to the witches. And the witches want that energy. The beginning kach, so that's the sacrifice of the billy goat. And begin kach sharim al hakus seir kol inen chatoechem, and for this reason v'lechein shorim al seir kol avon the Yisrael. So therefore, that's the reason why they put all the sins of the Jews on the head of the seir kolomar. Ano lo legvoda shalasamach mem sholchen lo. It's not because we want to send this gift to the samach mem, is because of his honor. So he says, "Shall the samachim shochin lo seir b'yom kippur, elakadei lahatein b'asa kaved shall the bonus Yisrael." It's sort of like to give him the idea or deceive him that this is something. This is going to be a very big thing that he's going to get himself involved in. V'hi afsher ala b'derek hazeh. So it can only be this way. You have to use this kind of animal, which really will tempt him to the most. Sheyachsha on the sholchim as a seir, and we make him think that it's for his glory, it's for his honor, but we really wanted to take all of our sins. Now, in other places in the Zohar that we've seen, that he actually wants our sins, because that's his accomplishment in this world. You have to understand a little bit deeper what's going on. Meir od tam lama makriva b'yom kippur uvachatos kol mosva moadim. So why is it that it's such a special little animal? Come and see like this. So he said, come and see. Even though the seir is really, I'm not sure what he means by this, but he says the seir is really a portion to the sitra achra, to the force of evil. And it would have been fit to bring a buck goat, a big goat, Shuhu Mora al Din Kosher Yoser, which is to tell you that it's a really bad din. So that the bigger the goat, the more bad it smells. It's unbelievable how bad they could smell. Din Kosher Avacha V'Raza Hocha, but the secret over here, Yesh Kan Sod. Ki Kol Chani Sitrin Achrona the Desanta Kulchum is Avim Yater. Now, what does this mean? He said, "V'kol elach hamadregos shal sitra achra." So first of all, he's saying that the sitra achra is not just one force; it's a force with different levels. Kol elo madregos shal sitra achra shalamata that are down in the worlds of taivas, in the world of physicality. Hem tamei biyosa. The further you go down, the more tama they are. They become more unclean. Because the tumah just keeps getting deeper and deeper. You can get this from the TV, but just by watching any show, that you could see how the deep the Tuma could possibly, not any show, but I mean it shows and shows and shows and shows. I begin kach be'ez. Let's talk about a buck goat. Now, the word buck goat, I mean to be a male goat. Now, like I say, when you've ever been around them, which I had this little farm for a while, and I had to breed my goats. They're big, barrel-chested, dangerous, and smell like unbelievably bad. So he says, Hamora al kushe vidin kasha hu chelko yoser. So he said, this is talking about an A's. That buck goat, he's really much, much harder. Much a din that's much, much harder. Hu chelkom yoser, that's really more fits into the side of the samach mem. Begin the sa'ara delay talya yata be'ira achra. Because the buck goat has a big chest. Remember, he stands at 4. And the hairs from part of his body and from his chest actually reach downward. It's long-haired. It's not like a sheep. It's a long-haired animal. Well, its hair grows long. The fee shachasara shalot teluyim yosa the mata, they hang down lower, behema acheres than any other animal. V'hishtalshlo sa'ara chumora. So what does it mean that his hair, that they're going downward? Mora al his pashtos kochos atmeim. This is teaching you about the spread of the unclean forces, amispashtim mehem, that come out from them. So in other words, he's like bubbling over with bad stuff. So just can imagine eating an animal like this. Would you ever do that? If you travel in the Middle East, which I did, it's a long time ago, but I don't think it's changed a whole lot. They used to sell these ramskin vests, and some of them stink. So people get used to it. That's part of their that's part of their culture. There's those that don't stink, but there are plenty that do. That's how it gets onto things. So his pashas kochos atameim, that's the spread of the kochos atuma of mehem. Kama the din the hon klale the sata b'sa'avu. Let's take about the punishments that were represented. Tolum is pashtet the mata betuma. They go down and down and down, and the concept of going down is getting into the muck of tuma. This malchus, a rishah, that is the samach mem, known as the sitra achra, acheres, which is the samach mem, he says, Malka Gakula Bahachasitro, Shuhu Hamelech shall call Hasitrim Bishim. He controls every level of lowness, every level of Tuma, every level of Machshavas Rose, every time of Mel, he controls them all. He brings them, he takes them back, he manipulates everything. Baruch Ihu Yater. What does that mean? Mis'avadalei. Barura behira v'zohar who yoser hatuma shalo. He has a tuma, which is his description. Barura, more refined, more shining, more clear. Who yoser hatuma shalo. He, in other words, he's panimi. His tuma controls, is the source of all their other tumas. V'lo mis'ava shlim kahanit tetoin. Ve'ena tuma shalema. It's not a tumor like a thicker tumor, like a muddy tumor, which is really powerful, and really like getting hit with a sledgehammer. It's not like that. The seir delay lo talia velo lo shi. Valkane knows them lows the ears, so therefore I'm trying to understand the metaphor here, the way that I understand it. So he said, Valkane knows them low seir shahasa'aro shalo enim teluyim lamata. So you give him this whole concept of going down and getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the levels of tuma, understanding that the samach mem is inside of all of those tumas. It's to show you that the din that is in this seir normally, because that's the way they grow, and they're going to turn in to this buck goat, which stakes to high heaven, and his hairs are hanging down onto the ground. He has lower and lower, and I tell you, this is something that's hard to believe, but after they urinate on themselves in such a way that that whole front part of them is just absolutely stinking. V'gam sarosos eina chalokim, their hairs are not smooth. So we're talking about, once again, not the buck goat, but the billy goat. And mefarish hatuma shalohu din chazak v'kasha. So we understand that the A's rather, is a din which is strong. It's and tough. Avach v'lo talion, but it doesn't hang down. In other words, he's saying that the seir is going to grow up to be a buck goat. So if that's what it is, all of the potential is in that seir. He said, v'lo talia begin, but he doesn't have hairs that hang down. In other words, they reach into lower depths. He's look a little more clear, more pure. Like in the lower levels, it doesn't reach down there. And this is the reason why you have to have the billy goat and not any other kind of an animal. Understand the nature, or try to understand the nature of these goats. So therefore we bring them for a sin offering, for the shloch l'zalzel, and to tell him to send him to the zalzel. Seir dafu lo b'chem is only, it can only be a billy goat, not any other animal. Kevin shehadoron niskabel al rosh haklipa, because this particular animal is received at the head of the klipa, that is the samach man himself. He takes it into his head and spreads it. And then after he is digesting this, he sends it further down into all of the lower worlds. Now, here you have the concept where he's really explaining in the last bit. If you want, you can listen to it again. Since there's no Taluya but down below, so let's read from here. This will straighten me out. Lo tasalia begin to lo yistakev bemis ava kahaniditoy. So he said, ve'enam taluyim lamata. So the hairs of the billy goat, they don't hang down like on the buck goat. Kadei shelo yischazek bo hispashtus atuma, so that it shouldn't be too strong spreading the tuma. Like, for example, when the hair hangs down. So this is the reason. That's what I'm trying to understand. We understand the seir, but I don't really understand the difference between the seir and, say, a sheep or well, we'll see. So therefore we bring him for a sin offering, bring it so that it could be to a zazel. He's saying that, I said this before, so I'm not coming back in my mind. He says that this has all the energy. This is the real potential. This is what the Samech Mem really wants to eat or to suck up or to absorb. All the potential for Tuma that is contained in this little animal. So he says, Seir Davka v'lo behema cheres. Became Shahadoron is Kabbalah Rosha Klipa, but it actually is received at the very top of the Klipa, which means like the Chabad, the Klipa. Acher Kach Hu Mashaleach Chelev, the called Osa Madregos Atachtonis, is able to send this bit of Tuma. He's saying the purest Tuma that you can get comes from the billy goat, because it's unadulterated. It was never given to another. It's absolutely 100% pure. Well, this is the SHIUR for Yom Kippur, and I hope you enjoy and get something out of it. This is Baruch Fleischman. I learned at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.